Hello, everybody, and welcome to the August 14th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, joined by Richard Migliori.
Well, we're all on the grass today, all green, a lot of trips on the turf. And the other thing I got to say, I can't believe how fast this meet's going by.
It always seems to go by very, very quickly as we're in the second half of the meet, but there's still plenty of racing to go, which is good for people like me who need to get out. Hopefully we'll get out with some of these horses going forward. Now, one horse that could have helped me get out if she'd even run second was Barrier to Entry, but one of her problems, Richie, was she couldn't get out.
Yeah, she kind of got caught up, and watching the race, it just felt like maybe should have got her position going forward, and instead kind of got steadied out of position and then was basically victimized.
Yeah, and there you see her in those purple with the white striped silks. This is a horse with a tremendous amount of speed who could have been in front. She didn't break as sharply. Her rider wasn't aggressive with her, but as you said, Richie, when she didn't go for that position early, she ends up getting badly shuffled out of the race. And not only is she out of position, but when she gets out of position, it ends up hurting her later in the race when she can't find room.
Right, and now she has to search for that room where if possibly she had been more forwardly placed, she would have been able to find a seam, had options. Basically, when you don't make a decision, decisions are made for you, Andy.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very, very good way to put it, Richie. You know, you've got to be decisive in those spots, and she ends up getting victimized. Now, it's not the rider's fault. She can't find a hole in here. She's just got too many horses in and around her, and as we'll see when we show the head-on, when she gets a little bit of room towards the inside, it isn't until it's too late because she doesn't have the room at this point when he wants to go inside. Now, she wasn't going to win this race, but she clearly was going to be second here. And based on the first race that she ran, her only turf start, she has extreme speed. I was very surprised because with relatively tepid pace, and you see the leader easily wire the field, that she was as far back as she was, Richie.
Yeah, and it wasn't like she broke well enough to get that position, but now you're going to see she's going to be searching for room in here. And really nothing materializes till very late, and even then, it's not a comfortable position.
No, I mean, it's hard enough, as we talk about so often, you and I have talked about for years, the horses trying to gain inside of horses, especially when there's no hole. As you can see, there's absolutely no hole whatsoever. It's kind of an uneven rail, and even here, there's about 3/4 of it a hole, and right here, actually, she was pretty good going for that spot.
Yeah, absolutely, and I will say this, and we're going to look at a race in a little while, with Taylor Rice, who loves to marry the fence. I would hate to try to get through inside of her because she looks like the only place she wants to be is on the fence.
Yeah, no, and then that horse was right down the inside, and Barrier to Entry, to me, is a horse, especially sprinting, whether later at this meet, early at Belmont, I think it would be better get her position, say, going forward, whether she's in front or right off the lead. She's got talent, and she's run well in both of her turf sprints, and it might not look like that on paper.
You know, this is a horse, too, that I think some people might get the impression, well, maybe she needs more distance. I think, if anything, it takes away from that closing kick that she has, or let her use her natural gait and have her speed and get that position.
I agree. Use her natural talents to her best advantage, as opposed to a lot of horses that don't. We're going to look at the fifth race on August 8th, and this is a race where a heavy favorite, Bella Qatari, not heavy, 8-5, probably ran the best race, but Richie and I feel like she might be kind of a trap. The first-time starter, Donna Tien, who finishes second, ran very well. It was the slow pace that dictated so much. Right now, Bella Qatari is actually fairly close, whereas the 6, Donna Tien, drops back further. Positions will reverse in the backstretch.
Yeah, but boy, they went like to the first turn, like they were actually going to set a legitimate pace, and then they threw out the anchor, and the field just came back to in everybody's face and really clustered up.
Yeah, I mean, they went 23-4, 23.93 the first quarter, which is fine. You know, you've got, these are New York bred maidens, they're not killers. Then they went 50-38, 1:16.03, and they ended up coming home in 22.68. That's racehorse time. What happens if these paces get so dramatically slowed up, Richie?
Well, it just seemed like everybody, when they got their position into the turn, and originally it looked like, okay, they're going to set off the right way. As soon as everybody established their position, nobody wanted to change. It was like they were very content to be, if they were first, second, third, fourth, they were happy to be there. And I think that was a mistake because it backed up so much.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's just so odd. You can watch it, and you start to see in this race, you can really see when everybody's grabbing. Now, back here, you see where the 5 is, and there's a 6, and Irad senses the lack of pace, and I thought Irad made a very good move getting the horse involved in here. He had no choice. If he lingered back any farther, he would have had no chance.
No, but he got out in the clear where he had that ability. Johnny Velasquez, unfortunately, on his filly, Bella Qatari, she just doesn't look like she helps him because she's like off the bridle, head up in his face, and he's trying to maintain position going forward, and he's getting shuffled back. She appears to me to be a very difficult filly to ride.
I agree. I think she's the kind of horse that makes riders look bad at short prices. And listen, she's good enough to win, and maybe, and you had made a point about blinkers to me before we did the show, if he can get her act straightened out, she's a talented horse, and she's probably better than these. But otherwise, unless she gets a fast pace in a one-turn race at Belmont, she's going to continually get herself out of position.
Yeah, because she looks like a horse that is just going to lend herself to trouble. There's no continuity. She doesn't stay in the bridle and help him. And when I say stay in the bridle, I mean just giving the rider some barometer of how much horse he has underneath him, where he's constantly having a reminder to stay in the race. And so for people that don't know what staying in the bridle is, that's when a horse is generous and he kind of gives you an indication of how much you have underneath you.
Well, and I that's a very good point with this horse. I think Donna Sheehan, the second-place finisher, ran extremely well in here, and Arad did everything he could to overcome what was a disadvantage, and I like that he made that decisive move in the backstretch. It doesn't usually work, but he sensed the slow pace. He had no choice. I think she ran the best race of anybody.
Yeah, she's very talented. That was a big middle move, but he sensed the slow pace, and I would rather have a guy make an aggressive mistake than be victimized by being passive.
Yeah, well, you and I are on the same page with that, for sure. The last race we're going to look at is the 11th race on August 9th. That was Saturday. And this was a first-time starter named Pure of Spirit for Barclay Tagg. He actually owns this horse. She was a cheap yearling purchase, and I think she got a good education in here. Didn't get out of the gate, a typical horse that wasn't really familiar with racing when she started. Took herself well in the race, but I thought she ran sneaky okay, Richie.
She ran very well, and Taylor Rice did the right thing. When she broke as slowly as she did, she just angled over, got right to the fence, and you can see her there. I mean, she's last, probably a good 12, 14 lengths off the lead at this juncture.
Yeah, and what I like about Taylor is she realizes, okay, I've been dealt a bad hand here, but I'm not going to do something stupid. I'm just going to let her settle herself in the race, and if she has horse, she'll get herself in the race, and if she doesn't, so be it.
This is the kind of race that helps make a racehorse for a career, not just a few starts. And you have to think from the family that she comes from, the Rice family, generations of good horse people, that this is something that she probably knew was the right thing to do.
Yeah, it was just patience. And Barclay's the same way as a trainer. I'm sure he told her this horse probably needs a race or two or more. But I like that this horse showed enough during the running of the race that she's actually okay. And, it's interesting because a lot of attention will be focused on Trophy, who finished third in this race. And nobody's really paying attention to a 28-1 first-time starter, Pure of Spirit. And in some ways, I found this to be the most interesting horse coming out of the race, Richie.
Yeah, I agree with you. And she basically did it sneakily, kind of got lost in the field, came up the fence, encountered some traffic, but I thought she finished well in spite of all that. And the fact that she was brave enough, the filly, and we know Taylor Rice, she'd rather be on the fence than anywhere else, that this filly was actually this comfortable in those surroundings. You think it bodes well for her going forward?
I think it does. She's down on the inside. It's a first start. She's made up the ground to get there. And yes, she saved ground. She obviously has to alter course. I like the way she alters course so smoothly. I think it's a tribute to Taylor, but I don't think it's a tribute to this horse, a first-time starter. It's not as though she stutter-stepped at all. She did it pretty facilely.
Yeah, and that speaks a lot about her athleticism. And then she actually kind of caught her full stride about a 16th out, where I thought her last 16th was her best, and her gallop out was good. This is definitely a filly that you got to look for going forward.
Well, and I also think, running more distance races, and whether we get a 1 3/8 race at Saratoga or a distance race down at Belmont, Barclay's probably looking for more distance than this filly, and she really ran well enough. She's not going to be 28-1 again, but she's not going to be 3-1. She didn't do enough running, and she doesn't look that exciting on paper. She's a bit promising, all things considered.
Well, like you say, she's going to be a little bit hidden, and even if you get 8-1, would you be happy?
I might be happy with 6 to 8-1 in the right kind of field. We'll see how things transpire. That does it for this week's Trips and Traps. But as always, we can use your help, and we get some good help. It's Trips and Traps at NYRAinc.com.